Panelists: former U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Ambassador Susan Johnson Cook; Director of Outreach, Multi-Faith Neighbors Network, Huranessa Faryad; President, Leah Foundation, Gloria Puldu; and Founder and Executive Director, Women Peace Network, Wei Wei New.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my distinct honor to share the stage this morning with these remarkable women leaders. I hope, I know, that today's exchange will be filled with some sobering observations, years of wisdom from working in the field, and hopefully some encouragement for all of us. While there are names and cases you may be familiar with, there are tens of thousands of unnamed women and girls on the front lines of advancing religious freedom in communities all around the world. They have endured religious freedom violations, egregious abuses, made worse simply for one reason: because they are women. They are victims of discrimination, lack of access to education, to work, to basic human needs, forced marriage, religious conversion, rape, torture, sterilization, mutilation, persecution, prison, and death. In recent years, many of you in this audience and around the world, very respected organizations and groups, you've worked to better understand the interaction of gender and religious freedom and persecution. Among those seeking to identify and really remove some of the obstacles and roadblocks to these issues are United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, United States Institute of Peace, Open Doors International, Aid to the Church in Need, Stephanos Alliance. You know the names. Did you know they have spent decades researching gender and religious persecution with a focus on women? Let me be very clear. The collective research has found when faced with religious persecution, women and girls experience disproportionate and compound anguish. First, for religion and belief, but then due to gender inequality. Political, economic stressors, cultural norms wrapped in the pretext of religion, and that remains hushed, hidden from view. It's not talked about in the community. So if you say, I don't know about it, that's why. They're not talking about it. We've researched it, but they're not talking about it. Moreover, the infringements are rarely recognized within the context of religious persecution. So even as they exacerbate an already desperate situation and further marginalize this community of women. In 2023, Forbes Women's Alliance added to the body of work. We conducted a global study, multi-faith, 22 countries, 13 religions. And one of the most important things we learned, structural change is the necessary accelerator for addressing this issue. It requires you, and you, and you, the external catalyst. It is not within the agency of the unempowered to have the resources to get out of this or create a space. And that's what we're discussing this morning. Ambassador Johnson Cook, you have a legacy of fostering collaboration. In your experience, why is it vital that we engage with leaders, faith leaders, government leaders, civil society on this issue?
Well, thank you for asking the question. I want to thank Katrina Lantos-Sweat and Ambassador Brownback for having us today. It's important because we are the voice for the voiceless. And unless someone speaks up, you started out saying there are tens of thousands who are experiencing torture and sexism and all kinds of torture and egregious acts of violence. And so there's some of us who are able to be at the table. And leaders have followers, but leaders have access. And that's what's important for structural, systemic change, to be the voice, to sit at the table. Most of my meetings as a diplomat, is in the role of ambassador, at the end of the meeting, there were always women around the table, that second round of tables, and they would ask me to please speak for them. Many were in countries where if they raised their voices, they would have repercussions. And so I took their cards, and guess what? I spoke up for them. And we created the Female Faces of Faith. We created the Women's Religious Freedom Roundtable. And those are still things that are happening today in the institutions. And unless we introduce them, they'll never be introduced. So we must be the voice. We must speak up. We must move, make the moves, and make our marks so the women will be represented and protected. So we are the voice.
Anyone else on the panel want to address the importance of engaging with leaders?
Sure. Over the past, first of all, thank you for having us today here. Over the past 10, 12 years, I have actually engaged with the leaders in government, especially with the U.S. Sorry. Hello. Yes. Including the IRF ambassadors and use of commissions and different bodies in the U.S. government and the Capitol Hill. What I notice is that when there is higher or meaningful engagement with the community members, representatives, and the leaders, and we see a more victim-centered approach to the policy responses and effectiveness of the policy. Sorry, this is. Hello? I think it's not working.
There you go.
Okay, thanks. So you know, we can see more victim-centered approach and effectiveness of the development of the policies and implementations of the policy. So I would say it is incredibly important that leaders engage with the community representatives and community members.
I'd also like to add, and I think this has come out from USAID recently, and yesterday in a lot of the talks, faith leaders have the trust. So you can talk about government leaders, but let's not forget the faith leaders. In the communities, they're the glue. They see the holistic view. Herannessa, what have you experienced personally and professionally at Multi-Faith Neighbors Network that helped you shape your views on the importance of education?
Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Thank you so much, Luann, for having this panel and having me on stage with these amazing women. I came to the United States as a 5-year-old child refugee from Afghanistan during the early 80s when Reagan was president. And my father really was so proud of being able to come here and thought that President Reagan was his BFF and made me translate for him every time he would come on TV. And you know, having those struggles growing up in Queens, New York City, and then 9/11 happened, I was put in a totally different scheme of life. I had the NYPD, FBI anti-terrorist task force come to my house. I've been called all sorts of names because I'm visibly Muslim. And I didn't want that to happen to anybody else. So when I came into working in the multi-faith peace building world at Multi-Faith Neighbors Network, I became a student also of Imam Majid. I've been his student for many years now. And working in this organization allowed me to advocate for others. We started the Inspire group at Multi-Faith Neighbors Network, which is an intentional program we put together to making sure that women are part of our retreats that we do with clerics here in the United States and overseas as well. As you know, women are more than half the population. If they're not at the table, something is wrong. So we are intentional about making sure that our voices are heard, and we are going forward with that. Our first overseas trip that we had retreat with the women's was in Sudan about 6 weeks before the war started. And I will tell you that the Christian women, the Muslim women were on their A game. They rocked that retreat so nicely that sometimes I think, I'm like, what were the men doing? And they have programs together. They've built a coalition. Even now during the war they're advocating for each other. They're working together. And it was so impactful for me to see women come together. And that's what makes me do the work that I do. That's what drives me, to see religious freedom on the ground, on the lives of people that we work with, to see that they're being impacted by what we're doing. And one lady came in the first day. She was Christian. She wore the same outfit as everybody else, so I couldn't tell that she was Christian because they kind of, put the sari scarf over their head. And the next day, because she felt so comfortable, she came with her claret collar. And I was like, you go, girl, that's the moment that, what we strive for when we see women being able to advocate and show who they are without fearing that they're going to be persecuted. Because I've been through it myself. I don't want other women to be going through that as well. So this work is really important for me. And then we also have training that I'm a part of. I've been training women, Catholic nuns, Muslim women worldwide on public speaking, not because they're going to go up on stage and give the speech of their lifetime, but they're going to have the skills and tools that they need to advocate for themselves in the communities that they live in. Whether they're dealing with people from another faith that are in leadership or their own faith, women and men that I train are going to be able to advocate for themselves. And then I train women and men also in leadership and multicultural norms and multi-faith norms as well, so that they're able to work with one another, not only during the time of peace, but when conflict arises. What are the skills that are needed in order for them to be able to work with one another? And that's been a huge highlight of the work that I do, because I'm actually impacting things on the ground. When we say religious freedom, if we're constantly talking, we're not doing anything on the ground, it doesn't mean anything. And then I also put together a program for my menstrual cup project at Multi-Faith Neighbors Network to have accessibility to dignity for women. Majority of girls in Africa rely on really unpleasant scenes that they have to engage in order to get menstrual cups, menstrual products at their access, and I don't think that's okay. Majority of women here in the United States do not go to school or do not go to work for 3 to 5 days because they cannot get access to menstrual products. And that is part of the work that we have to do. So my project, and I'm so grateful to the Adams Center for funding my first project that's gonna happen here in Northern Virginia and Loudoun County in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're very organized because we have very little time. So we have leadership, track with me, leadership, education. Now, let's go to the third pillar, which is Weiwei. Former political prisoner, lawyer, human rights advocate. Share how you're using the legal and procedural framework, the systems and mechanisms and institutions to fight for accountability and justice.
Thank you very much. This is a fantastic question indeed. And in the culture of impunity, it's essential for us to prevent protect women from the violations of FORB. Just to add to what Haranisa was saying, the divisive narrative and the culture of impunity is something that drives escalations of this FORB, and sometimes it can lead to the atrocity crimes, such as in the case of Burma genocide. And when it's come to the utilizations of the legal instruments and institutions, especially international laws and norms and institutions, it's become detrimental, imperative for us to be able to bring justice and accountability, especially in the situations where the country has rendered the legal system entirely, and when there is no rule of law. In Burma right now, the military has been blazingly violating freedom of FORB and launching airstrikes against the Christian churches, detaining Christian leaders, and intensifying genocidal policies and attacks against the Rohingya populations. Even before the coup, the legal systems that we had, the constitutions, does not provide a framework for preventions of FORB. Therefore, it was imperative for us to utilize the international law to bring about justice and accountability. And my organization's Women's Peace Network have been tirelessly working to utilize existing international legal norms and instruments, engaging with the UN special procedures, advocating at the UN Human Rights Council, General Assembly, and Security Council, and so on, to develop or establish international justice processes in the case for the genocide that military has committed. We have also, at the end of the day, these international laws and instruments only work when the governments have political will and the governments take action. So it is also for us important to galvanize the political will of the states and governments. So we engage with the US government. We push for the passing of the laws on Burma and determinations of the atrocities what happened with the Rohingya as genocide. So we basically have to be strategic and use existing framework when there is no hope internally, domestically. You need to utilize international instruments and grab every opportunities and hope and framework that are available and keep faith and continue to work for the justice and accountability.
Thank you, Wei Wei. And then Gloria. As an educator, an activist, and founder of Leah Foundation, how are you transforming fear and denial into hope and action through grassroots campaigns and advocacy for women and girls in Nigeria?
Thank you very much for this very important question, Lou. And I want to appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak on behalf of the Nigerian girls and women. You know, it's a huge privilege to know that there's true fear because of what is happening. But permit me to use a scripture in the Bible that says in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, "For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and sound mind." And for me, this promise, I literally transform it into hope, because the fear is not there. I have to bring it into hope. And that sound mind is to make sure that we bring action into what we are doing. And so for me, the Leah Foundation was created in honor of, the great faith of Leah Sharibu, who refused to renounce her Christian faith. And so we use that organization to advocate for young girls who have been denied their rights to practice their religion like Leah Sharibu, and also go to school. And not just young girls, but all other women and Christians, especially knowing that for Nigeria, it is the worst place for a Christian persecution on earth. And so we are using our voices to speak out locally at the grassroots, engaging governments, and also telling them and pressuring them by using, brave steps, either through protest, demonstration, or marches, to tell them what you are doing is wrong when people are being killed in so many villages, in so many communities. And apart from being killed, our girls are being stolen, our women are being stolen, and they are, raped and made sex slaves by the bandits and by the Fulani headsmen, not headsmen, militia, by the Boko Haram, who, Boko Haram literally means education forbidden. And so we do those protests. And apart from that, we also make sure that we empower these women, not just with education, but those that are not able to go to school, we give them for those that have gone through different forms of captivity, it could be prostitution, out of the poverty that they found themselves, their husband being killed and all that, we give them the opportunity to have skills and then biblical discipleship, so that they will be very grounded in their faith and so on. And also we have some programs that we also use agriculture, which is farming and either husbandry, called the Sandy Helpers, Hope and Freedom Centers, Masada, and all that, just so that we are able to reach out and help women. For me, I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity that we have had at this summit. Nigeria had futures frequently in almost every discussion. So thank you very much for that opportunity.
Can I add something to
Yeah, briefly.
I just want to say that what's happening in Nigeria, and for you as a Christian woman to advocate for Christians, it shouldn't just be you. We as Muslims, people of other faith, need to advocate for them as well. And that has been something that has been lost in a lot of translation. I say that as a Muslim because this is such a huge part of my faith. If we look back on the traditions of our Prophet Muhammad, he was so adamant about religious freedom from law to down to the grassroots on the people. It shouldn't just be you doing that work. I should be helping you. So when I train Catholic nuns in Nigeria and advocating for themselves, I have a lot of people asking me, like, why are you training Catholic nuns to advocate for themselves? And I say it's because that's what God expects from me. My spiritual connection to him is tied to making sure that everyone can.
This is wonderful to hear, and that's why we are sitting here and talking. We are organizing a conference in May, bringing the Christian women and the Muslim women so that we'll be able to push and speak together, that we need to advocate for each other. And so thank you so much.
Let me add to that, too.
absolutely.
Men, you are not off the hook. We need you.
Yep.
We need you. We need to walk together. This is not where we have failed. A little bit of intel in my mind with all this research. We made it too much about us and them. Think about the women's issue as another minority issue, as you would ethnic or another religion. Some of the best work on the ground is being led by men who have the voice and authority and recognize and honor women. So please, men. Okay, we're going to end this panel. You've heard of like speed dating. This is called speed panel conclusion, all right? Each one of you, all right? 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I wanna
What
thank you.
would you ask the audience to do to engage, to help on this issue? 30 seconds.
Well, first of all, thank you. I want to thank you for your work. What you can do with us is work together with us across lines, across faith lines, across ethnicity lines, and certainly across gender lines. It's men and women, all of us together working. Grassroots, those of us who have government access, that's the key word. If you have access, if you can open the door, let us walk through the door and sit at the table. Not lean in, but sit down.
Haranessa.
I would say that there's so much talent, wisdom, and intellectual access here in this room. Become a mentor. Teach what you know. Get people who are from a different faith into your circle. Take them into the things that you're doing. Teach them so that we're not constantly repeating this cycle when we're 70, 80 years old that, oh, we need to like do this multi-faith work and the peace-building work that we're doing and promoting religious freedom when we don't have people who have been with us and we're not mentoring people. That's what's been lacking because we see an influx and then a drop, an influx and a drop. So mentorship, definitely.
Thank you, Gloria.
Yes, so on behalf of all of us that came from Nigeria, I want to request each and every one of you, over 40 countries seated here, to speak on behalf of Nigeria, that Nigeria should be placed back on the list of CPC, because it will be so helpful for us to have our government being pressured so that the persecution and all the violence that is happening, and not just affecting only the Christians, but affecting our Muslims, women, and men as well, to be stopped. So please put your voices together and let's pressure the United States government. And thank you, the UK, EU, each person that has been speaking, but we ask you to please help us add to our voices. Thank you.
Wei.
Oh, your mics are off today.
Hello.
Can you hear? Can you hold it up? He's got you.
Okay, good.
There we go. 30 seconds.
Thank you.
She's rolling her eyes at me.
Persecutions against one ethnic minority or one minority groups is persecutions against all religious minorities. And therefore, please show solidarity to each other, among each other. Please stand with other faiths and other communities. And please don't forget Burma. We need your support. We need your help and your solidarity. Thank you very much.
And Lou, thank you for the work that you do. Continue doing what you do because it keeps going to the forefront. It documents it. And unless we have the documentation, nobody knows. So thank you for the work you do.
And I have an ask. Can the moderator put an ask? Can we get some more funding into FORB? Not just women, not just pet projects. Around the world, the number one thing we heard from 500 organizations, big and small, is men and women, is teach us to fish. Where's the money? We can't work with a little bit. So in closing, I'd like to add this thought. We had 25 minutes. My prayer, our hope, is that you are convicted, that you will see that there is significant potential to champion this. We can work on prevention, we can work on participation, we can work on protection, and we can work on justice for women and FORB. Would you join me in thanking our panel?
Thank you.